With the landmark chapter of Chapter 250 of Fortnite City Apocalypse officially being out, we are seeing Lancelot actively destroy everything in his path. He might actually be fulfilling a good bit of the initial Knights of prophecy for the destruction of Camelot. We see a bit more of the remnants of the Chaos Knights. We see Lancelot basically eviscerate so many people. We see Jericho in this chapter again. Lancelot actually uses named attacks and unveils a brand new named attack in this chapter, while also giving us a bit of hope that we might actually have the possibility of bringing Lancelot back from the brink, meaning that it's not impossible. But even then, this chapter is just a straight up slaughter, and Chaos Lancelot is incredibly dangerous. And we're just gonna jump right into things. But before we get into the chapter, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps, and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel. It shows you want to see more. And I'm gonna be doing more discussion videos, post-chapter reviews on other topics for the series, because there's a lot more to talk about outside the chapters. So let's get right into chapter 250 of Fortnite City Apocalypse, titled Chaos Lancelot. And we got a color spread, and this is another Lancelot Guinevere cover spread. Basically a flip of what the last one we had around chapter 200. This one, while I do like that we got a real color palette for Lancelot, as he is just completely red with the black wing extensions over his back, with the red suit and red gloves effectively merging with his hand. I'm not a fan of the positioning of how Guinevere is. The proportions feel off in terms of how she's laying on Lancelot. The way she's drawn just feels off. I'm gonna be honest, and it's not my favorite color spread if I'm gonna be honest with you guys. But that's really all I got to say about this color spread. I don't really feel anything towards it. But anyway, the chapter begins in the remnants of Camelot, as we see the surviving group of Chaos Knights basically going over the entire situation of what happened, as literally after the wedding of Cath disguised as Arthur and Guinevere, the citizens basically all vanished, and Camelot basically crumbled due to the fact that all the stolen land was also attached to the people, and the realm was built through the hopes and dreams of the people in Camelot. And with them gone, Camelot, for the majority of it, has basically crumbled, only leaving what's left due to residual chaos power that made the dimension, and basically the remaining Chaos Knights, who are also kind of fueling the spell. They go over how Arthur is still missing and they can't get his guidance, so they're gonna have to make their own decisions. And so what do the Chaos Knights do? They blame everything on the Four Knights of the Apocalypse, as they think that if they defeat the Four Knights, they'll be able to bring back Camelot to its former glory and bring back all the citizens that have disappeared. Now, I do like how we kind of left, like, basically almost all of the Chaos Knights that weren't the Four Perils back in Camelot, as they are completely in the dark on, like, who the Arthur they've been following is, and the citizens now know the truth. Same with the Four Perils. So a part of me was wondering what would happen if they learned of, the deception that they were under, but that doesn't seem like it's going to be the case. Either way, it is a nice juxtaposition to see the loyal Arthur Knights that were tricked by Cath for well over a decade, and even less depending on when they became Holy Knights, try and come up with a plan to, from their perspective, save the citizens, defeat the villains that destroyed their new home, and hopefully find their king. So that is always going to be something that I do appreciate. Now, this meeting of the remnants of the Chaos Knights are led by two new Chaos Knights who are given names in this chapter: Cardew, the man with the beard and the scar on his left side, and the woman named Deanston. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. And from what I've heard from the Discord and the Reddit, that these are brands of scotch. So we're back to the traditional naming scheme for Chaos Knights, that they are named after liquor in some way, shape, or form of alcohol, and this time we got scotch. Nakaba does tend to like his drinks, but the fact that they actually got names in this chapter actually shows that they are somewhat important for this section of the story. But anyway, the woman leading them is named Deanston, at least I'm pronouncing that correctly. saying that they have to take out the Four Knights of the Apocalypse for the glory of their kingdom, but they especially have to be wary of Lancelot, the god of war, who killed so many other Chaos Knights. And so, they've devised a two-pronged assault. They will have one half of the Chaos Knights pose as citizens to kind of take Lancelot off guard, make him believe that they are helpless, they're sick, longing for their partners and loved ones. Meanwhile, while the four knights coming onto the scene, seeing these people, will be distracted, Cardew will be leading the strike team so they can attack from behind and take the four knights off guard, while the citizen posing Chaos Knights also attack from surprise as well, and so they can hopefully take out the four knights. Honestly, not that bad of a plan, if I'm being honest. If you're in a desperate struggle and need a decent enough plan, this kind of works. Unfortunately, they're facing monsters, and we'll see that this plan was never going to work. But I give them points for trying. Now, the thing that I do kind of like about this chapter is that this does humanize at least Tristan, the woman who is basically the go-to leader of this group, as we get her perspective for basically this entire chapter, and she's the one giving the exposition, setting up the plan, and has the most relevance, and is someone that has found a kink in one of Lancelot's best moves, and that's something we'll get into later. Anyway, as the two groups diverge, we get the inner monologue of Tristan, and we also learn that she has survived multiple assaults and fights against Lancelot. She has been part of multiple groups and strike teams to fight Lancelot, and she kept surviving all of them, if anything, just barely. And we'll get to learn why later on in this chapter. But I do genuinely like that we have someone who has experience dealing with Lancelot, and she is one of the only characters that has survived an encounter with him, because once Lancelot was revealed, the big thing about him when he was fighting against the Dark Talismans, when he revealed himself, was that he never let anyone he fought or discover who he was live to tell the tale, and so he kept himself completely on the down low until all four knights were assembled. So I like that this is a new thing that has occurred over the last 2 years during the time skip. It really feels like things have progressed for every character, even those that are on the enemy side, and I really do like that. But now we get Tristan's inner monologue as she's talking about how Lancelot is just the real deal of strength, and how she finds it so unusual because he doesn't wield magic like Gawain, doesn't have demon blood like Tristan, and doesn't have the spiritual life force of Percival. He is just called the strongest of all of them, and it's for a good reason. For his dominant battle sense, his ability to finish everybody in one strike. This is what she's learned from facing Lancelot so many times and surviving from the skin of her teeth based off of this. So she has basically kept running the numbers to try and think of a way to take him on. But this is when she goes to the group that's going to be posing as sick, elderly, and, heartbroken people of Camelot in order to catch the four knights off guard. She ends up continuing in her inner monologue, saying that she has to put an end to the hardships they've all went through, and that she has to defeat Lancelot and restore prosperity to the land of Camelot. So I do like how she has a bit of a one-sided rivalry / grudge against Lancelot. It makes this feel a lot more personal for this character that we're introduced to in this one chapter, and it does help add a bit of extra depth to the character, like she's a fleshed out person, even though she's only been in this one chapter. Unless she's been in the background, and I have completely missed it. I'm sure there are people that are probably going to mention this if I miss it, but hey, it is what it is, and I do like these interactions. If I miss something, I actually get to engage a lot more. But anyway, we cut to the strike team, as Cardew ends up telling everybody to strengthen their resolve and have their endurance tested right now. Because for the next hours, maybe even days or weeks, they need to be prepared for the surprise attack, and they have to lay low and wait for the four knights to appear so they can enact their plan. And almost like comedy, Chaos Lancelot just appears in the very next panel, the very second he stops talking. And all the Chaos Knights in front of Cardew are stunned that Lancelot is right behind him, and Cardew begins to realize that, with Lancelot only uttering 2 words. Shining Road. As a massive shining explosion occurs in the forest where the strike team was, as Lancelot in one blast kills all of them. Without hesitation, no bargaining, nothing. He just evaporates everybody in an instant, leaving Deanston in utter shock and horror as she sees from the smoke and the flame from his destructive power, she sees Chaos Lancelot as he is looming over the rest of the Chaos Knights, as she is completely baffled that this is Lancelot, as she is completely confused over what his appearance is like. But Lancelot then waves his javelin spear, as then Deanston tells all the Holy Knights, all the Chaos Knights, to run for their lives and find a way to just survive. The operation is off. They can't do anything. They have to prioritize survival. And with the wave of his spear, Lancelot does another shining road, cleaving and destroying, killing another section of the Chaos Knights. And we get a really nice perspective shot, showcasing the massive crater he left with his first shining road, and the trailing from the point of origin to the next shining road that went off. And Lancelot then glances over at the rest of the Chaos Knights that are running away, as Deanston looks back, as he lunges another shining road towards Deanston. And this is where we get a reveal of a pretty decent weakness for Lancelot's shining road in particular, and also shows how Deanston has survived every interaction with Lancelot up until now. Her magic ability is Decoy, a very specific ability obviously, but she then creates a spiritual, I would say magical after image, like a literal shadow clone made of her magic power, and it gets in the way of the shining road and takes the attack, as once she is hit by the attack, her clone, the shining road dissipates with the actual impact of the attack. And Deanston ends up collapsing on the floor and falls into a trench nearby, as she goes over the only weakness of Shining Road. It chases after its targets, and with the right decoy, you'll be able to dodge it. So literally, since she was technically in the line of sight of Lancelot, she was the target of Shining Road. Everybody just in the way was eviscerated in that pathway of Shining Road. And so, she used her decoy that looked exactly like her, the target, and Shining Road, since that was the visualization seemingly of the target, once it hit the decoy, Shining Road hit its impact and exploded, making the end of the attack. So that is a really cool, actual weakness to Shining Road, and I could see someone like Percival, or perhaps even Gawain, figuring this out at some point, and abusing it to actually be able to fight back against Lancelot and not get one-shotted like it. And I do like that it shows how Lancelot can, well, not one-shot an opponent and show how Deanston has survived. Really cool. I honestly am surprised that we're getting this much depth into a character that is only for this chapter, and you'll see why. But right now, Deanston is kind of in a bad situation. He's only right now hoping for the rest of the Chaos Knights to stay alive and survive so they can have a chance to fight another day. Unfortunately, she will not get the chance to see them ever again, and vice versa, as Lancelot spins and points his spear into the air. As the sky begins to turn black, the dark wing-like thing around Lancelot begins to engulf Guinevere like a protective shell, and Lancelot unleashes his second named attack in the entire series, the Remnants of Destruction, as the sky goes completely black, with the only thing being visible outside of himself is a shining moon in the pitch black sky. Lancelot covers up Guinevere in his dark wing thing, like I said, as a protective shell, as Guinevere is within it, seemingly safe from the effects of this spell. And Deanston looks over at the moon and says it's beautiful, as the ray of light shines down onto her. As we get to see, she is effectively evaporated, erased from existence, leaving nothing but her clothing. And the same thing happens to the rest of the Chaos Knights that were in the general vicinity. And just like that, they're all turned to dust, as if they never existed, only leaving their clothes. As the moon dissipates, and the darkness of the sky disappears as it goes back to daytime. As Lancelot is standing holding Guinevere at the destruction, 2 massive craters from Shining Road, technically 3, and all the Chaos Knights completely erased from existence, as he lamentingly looks down at Guinevere and holds her close. As he flies away, and as he's flying away in the now more destroyed remnants of Camelot, he destroys all of the hovering debris of Camelot. The patched up lands that are left behind, the ruins of castles and buildings and homes. Everything in Lancelot's path, he is just swinging his spear, destroying, with just sheer destructive force, and not even a shining road, if we're being honest. He keeps just swinging his spear, destroying everything. And then something catches his eye. A house off on the edge by itself. And this is where we see Jericho again, for the first time post-time skip, outside of an extra chapter in, I believe, volume 23 or 24 of the Four Knights manga. But we see the Camelot-created fake older Lancelot with Jericho running in to try and tell her that everything outside is just getting bad and that they have to run away, with Jericho wondering where would they go. But the fake Lancelot says he'll be okay as long as he's with her, and Jericho says the same, and says she'll go with him even to hell itself. And now throughout these 2 pages, we get the black box from when Lancelot was fully turning into Chaos Lancelot just 2 chapters ago, as it's fragmented. Why did you not escape? As Jericho looks over at the fake Lancelot and just says, I abandoned the chance I was given after betraying those so dear to me. If this is my punishment, I'll gladly take it. I was so happy, as it implies that she kisses the fake Lancelot. And in this instance, after Lancelot from like literally his subconscious, probably fighting back the urge to destroy that whole spot, asks Jericho why she didn't escape subconsciously. In an instant, Jericho's entire home, herself included, is destroyed, as Jericho has been killed by Lancelot. With the chapter ending with Guinevere waking up, staring up at Chaos Lancelot, delirious, with Lancelot's final words in the chapter saying, "You're just so stupid," with an intense look of anger on his face after destroying Jericho's home. And that ends the chapter. Now, I fully love this chapter, pretty much everything except for the Jericho part, most likely. I like the idea that we got to basically walk a mile in the shoes of like one of these Chaos Knights, her perspective, how she survived so much from Lancelot due to her very specific ability that is meant for survival, and learning the weakness to Lancelot's Shining Road, his iconic attack. And even her surviving, her whole platoon, basically what I believe is probably the remaining members of the Chaos Knights, have all been erased by Chaos Lancelot. We got a brand new attack that most likely is a combination of his Hazy Moon plus the corruptive nature of chaos that Kath gave him, and it erased people from existence seemingly, or perhaps devoured their very life essence as they crumbled to dust, as it seemed like they didn't suffer, because Deanston just looked at herself in confusion as she was just entranced by the moon. So it's very likely that it is somewhat a, well, painless death, which is crazy to think about. And then Lancelot destroys everything else. Now, I'm probably going to make an entire video on it, but again, I am very disappointed with how Nakaba has portrayed Jericho as a character this entire goddamn manga. I did not like the twist reveal that she left because of Lancelot. While we see her kind of like, her whole like mentality twisting because of the lake that they were trapped in that other dimension, literally warping her like protective nature of Lancelot, right now, there is no way of her having some sort of like redemption or some actual healing for her character and her mentality. She went out in her fucked up delusion of an older version of the child she basically raised and trained, who was the son of one of her like previous like loves of her life, and effectively like new found family, and she betrayed all her friends, and I am very I'm angry at this because now she basically just had an unceremonious death by Chaos Lancelot. Now look, is it poetic for her to die from the person that she literally betrayed everybody else for because she was disgusted with her own feelings and then went to Camelot for the, again, said twisted and fucked up feelings? Yes. I just do not think it was done well at all. And genuinely, I don't think we really needed it. And I think this is kind of Nakaba's way of saying, I just wrote the Jericho thing as a twist for twist's sake, and I had no plan for her as a character going forward, as she had been absent for nearly 200 chapters, only to show back up in both a extra chapter, a flashback, and to die as the first major casualty of a named important character from Chaos Lancelot. Like, genuinely, it's disappointing. This whole chapter was cool. Having it all from the perspective of the Chaos Knights for like 80% of the chapter, and seeing a weakness to Lancelot's ability that we thought was impossible. Lancelot using a new attack. Seeing actual, like, writing in depth for a character that was only existed for one chapter that felt believable. This had all the makings of genuinely a fantastic chapter. The Jericho part, I am just kind of pissed off about because it was an unceremonious death that I really feel like shows and Nakaba had no plan for the character. It's annoying. It's really annoying to me. But the only real silver lining of this is that Lancelot's inner thoughts were present, if not fragmented. The black box is definitely Lancelot's real self and personality that has been suppressed by Chaos Lancelot. The power has corrupted him to the point where his true personality is dormant, and those dark destructive tendencies and negative emotions are literally on the surface. As literally as the chapter ends, that is a bit of real Lancelot poking out as he calls Jericho stupid for not escaping. So that also shows that there's a possibility to bring the real Lancelot out from Chaos Lancelot, and separating him from Chaos without killing him might be possible. Other than that, this chapter was great. The Jericho stuff was disappointing, I'm gonna be honest, but other than that, I loved it. Getting a new Lancelot attack, seeing him span Shining Road even more was really fun and hype. Seeing a weakness to the Shining Road was great, and having a literal one-time character have actually a lot of decent depth and exploration in one chapter honestly shows that Nakaba has the potential to write really cool and interesting side characters when he really sits down and tries. But that's all I got for you guys this week for this chapter. Let me know your thoughts, opinions, theories in the comments section down below. And once more, if you haven't already, like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps, and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. With all that said and done, hope you all have an awesome day.